It's 8:15 and I'm going to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Were there any item changes on the agenda?
Yes. Session. Discussion. Do we need to?
I'm having a little trouble hearing Chris.
Short item, the agenda.
Yeah,
Short item on the executive agenda for negotiating with teachers.
Okay, will that change the time? We have 20 minutes set aside for adjudication.
I think adjudication should only be about 10.
So let's go ahead and do the extension.
Anyone else? I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And but I can hear just to share. I can hear John, I can hear Jamie, and I can hear Todd. Great. So there's no need to. For some reason I had trouble hearing Chris, and him moving the microphone cooler made it better. Although it's still not perfect for Chris. So just sharing that.
Our next item is new employee introduction.
So Commissioners, I am absolutely delighted to introduce you officially our new HR and Communications Director, Lisa Miller, who's given us a person today. So Lisa, you want to say hi and say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, come up to the mic.
Thank you. Well, good morning, and I am very pleased to be here. And I come to you with an experience of over 25 years working in public service, and I'm excited to be back in private service, or excuse me, public service. I worked in the private sector for a while and enjoyed that as well. But it's good to be back sort of home in that area that I'm most familiar with. So I'm glad to be here and starting to get to know everyone and most folks, a few people I haven't had a chance to meet yet within the business. And maybe people are new people and already things that Chris and others have wanted to work on. So
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Welcome.
Welcome.
I've already received your emails. I will get on my Delta Smile thing. So I haven't done that yet. A last minute kind of person.
I also like the inclusion of that we completely extended an offer and the offer has been accepted for a new working board / reference person. Joe,
Shay. Joseph Shay.
Joseph Shay.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And you'll get me in next time. The rest.
Wow. Great.
I was just going to say we found somebody with some intensity.
Yes. Oh, that's all we need is more intensity. Don't have enough of that here.
In a great way. In a great way.
Fantastic. Welcome. Are you going to stay for the meeting?
I am, yeah.
Great. Perfect. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda with approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of July 23rd, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of July 20th, and approval of claims for August 13th. Any questions? The tool?
No, thank you. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Moving on to public comment. Robin, do you have any comments? No, nothing today. Okay.
Should we call Rick? Just see if you guys.
If I spoke.
And I can't see if there's anyone online because we can't see the sidebar there, so. Looks like there are no hands up. Okay, you will have another chance for public comment towards the end of the meeting. Okay, now on to new business. With approval of the resolution of work order number 3 for engineering service to be provided by Toth and Associates. Will that be you, Kurt?
Yes, ma'am. Morning, Commissioners. Good morning, John.
Morning.
Yes, I'm here to request approval for this work order for Toth Engineering. Phillips 66 is looking to do some expansion in their facilities, which would be an increased electrical load, and the current setup of the substation and the low side isn't enough transformer power to be able to deal with that increased load if we were going to lose one of those main transformers. There's 3, but even the third one is more of the station service being the power for the yard, for all the controls inside of the yard. But then the 2 main ones are for the load from Phillips. And if they were to increase their load by that amount, it would be too much. If we were to lose one of those main ones, it'd be too much. And so they're looking to expand, and we don't have in-house the ability to really work with Phillips engineers and properly make sure that everything's being designed properly. So we actually brought Toth on in the beginning of the year for professional services agreement, a PSA, and so this is work order number 3. But that being said, this is to support us in dealing with Phillips engineers, and this is for Toth to help us out with the engineering.
So
And
Kurt,
go ahead, Chris.
can I jump in for just a sec?
Sure.
Yeah, the changes that Phillips looking at doing, on the one hand, they're looking at adding an electrolyzer. So it would generate hydrogen without using steam reformation that they could use for their process. So that's a decarbonization. That's something like 5 megawatts of average load. So it's pretty significant. The second part of what they're looking at is a very large motor. And Kurt, you may remember this. I think it's something on the order of 12,000 horsepower.
I think it's 10,000 horsepower.
It's for a single large motor, and a very large motor. And they're using that to improve the efficiency of their overall operation. So again, it helps reduce the carbon impact of our customer. And but both of those things add a huge amount of load to our system, and that's what causes the overload, which causes us to hire a professional engineer to help us find the best answer for our customer.
Questions?
Yeah, just so make sure I get this right. They run about, is it about 25, 27 megawatts of use?
I think
I think
they're
25.
25 average megawatts.
And is this going to increase that? Or
Yes.
it is? Okay, so they will actually be drawing more power.
That is
Right.
correct.
However, their carbon loading or the amount of carbon emissions should go down. If they're getting more efficient and they're,
But I don't know if they're going to have more output.
okay,
So I can say that the carbon per unit of output produced, whether it's, a barrel of
Carbon
gasoline.
intensity.
Yeah, it's so that I think the intensity is going down.
that's,
But
okay.
the total amount of carbon, I'm not sure.
And so is part of the I think we're looking at Ruby Flats for an increase of about 6 megawatts, is that right?
That's correct.
Is this going to help us in delivering that increase of power when that comes online?
Well, it'll make it, it'll give it a home.
Okay.
And the only reason we engaged with Ruby Flat was at Phillips 66 request to cover the electrolyzer. So their request was before they were thinking about adding a large motor. So, I mean, everything's in play right now. It appears that the size of the Bonneville base system is going to be increased somewhat. And really, Brian is still the expert on that stuff. So some of this load may be covered in an increased allocation of tier one, but we haven't seen the actual numbers on it yet. So
And is that part of the negotiating we'll be entering into for the contract coming up with BPA?
well, there's two contracts coming up. There's the one that covers through 2028 and then the one that's post 2028. It should have impacts on both. I'm not in a position to say, oh yeah, here's what that's going to mean in terms of our allocation. It might be, you know, a megawatt or a share of a megawatt, or it might be something more substantial. I just don't know yet.
Great. Thank you.
Atul, do you have any questions?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Chris, and by the way, the new mic is working much better. Thanks for that change, Mike. So the supply from Ruby Flats, is that project a subset or adjacent to the thing that I've read in the press, which is a very large solar project in partnership with Energy Northwest in Richland that is being explored? Are those all connected projects, or is it a subset, or is it adjacent to it?
Kind of none of the above. It's about 5 miles away from the Hanford site. The project you're talking about, and it's like helical services or, and they're
Yes,
looking for
yeah.
200 megawatts, 800 megawatt hours, and paired with some storage. That is on Hanford Reservation land that's completely unrelated to Ruby Flats.
And is that supply something that we have also potential access to, or no?
I don't know who the off-taker for that's going to be. If we have access to it, it'll probably be through Energy Northwest, but there may already be an off-taker such as Microsoft or some other private entity that looking to fill a data center.
I would assume so, right? We would have heard about it at Energy Northwest if there was any access to that. But
I don't know if that's true or not. The negotiations are between the firm and Department of Energy directly, and that's how they got the grant funding and access to the Hanford Reservation. So I would expect that was done outside of Energy Northwest. I really don't know who the off-takers are. It could be Energy Northwest. It could be some, you know, private third party. It could be another utility. I'm just not sure at this point.
And
I'll just
is there anything for us to explore on that front, or you think it's really not pertinent to us, and probably won't be pertinent to us? What's your feeling on that?
Well, I think we just got to find out, are they going to make an offering that we need to consider? And if they do, then we would go ahead and figure out, is that part of our portfolio? Does it fit? But at this point, you know, we've got a reason to look for the Ruby Flats, and we're looking at that. That one is very far down the line. We've been waiting for the Bonneville Interconnect study since 2019 on Ruby Flats. We're now told that the preliminary study will be next year sometime, maybe. So, you know, 6 years to get a study on connecting. So the one that's on the Hanford Reservation is much, much earlier than that. They're nowhere near, they haven't gotten into the interconnect queue or anything. So, you know, they're well behind Ruby Flats. And when they go into the interconnect queue, they'll have to name their off takers, and, you know, then we'll know if we have a shot at any of it and whether or not we even want any of it.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is because, of course, I know that when we started exploring Ruby Flats in 2019 or 20, the pricing looked really good. And as time went on, the pricing became a little bit less attractive and a little bit more unattractive. And I was hoping that maybe the larger project might provide better pricing and or might provide competitive pressure on the pricing of Ruby Flats. But that may or may not be.
Yeah, I would expect the opposite at this point. There's not enough supply and too much demand. So this is going to end up being premium supply when it's coupled with storage. So it's going to be firmed on site, which will really impact the transmission characteristics of it. So I would expect it to be much more expensive than an unfirmed source like Ruby Flats.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, thanks. No more questions.
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thanks, commissioners.
Thank you, Kurt.
Did Atul approve?
You did.
Yes, aye.
Now moving on to approving resolution, sorry, to renew benefits insurance.
So I'll present on this one next time. We let our HR person do it. So this is just a normal renewal. We went for a full look last year at the best prices. It was Regents and Delta Dental. And this is the update on that. Last year it was $0. This year it's about 7.1 or 7.7. I've got it on the
It's 7.7.
7, okay. And so really since 2022, we've had about a 3% per year increase on our health benefits. This is, I think, a pretty good deal. Even though it still costs a lot. So I would recommend the commission go ahead and authorize me to sign the documents and re-up our health benefits.
So just a quick question here.
Mhm.
So this is for 2025 pricing
That is correct.
and there's,
Which begins, I think, September 1st of this year.
okay,
So their calendar year is a little different than ours.
gotcha. Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, is it seems a little early for a calendar year plan to be pricing out. So, okay, with that, no further questions. I'll move approval.
Atul, did you have any questions?
Yes, no question. I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Next, we have the first half financial report, and Annette Smith will be presenting.
Good morning. I will again attempt to share my screen. Oh, I want that one. There we go. All right. Is that up?
Yep.
It is.
Oh, good. All right. Well, good morning, commissioners. This is our typical half-year update. And we tend to do this at the beginning of the budget season, just to give you a high-level view of where we currently are with our 2024 budget, you know, talk about any big variances, and then it helps us kind of get in the mindset and then to dive into the budget for the next year. So I'll present the slides and then I'll stop at the end of each slide if you have any questions on it. All right, so when I was doing this, I was really hot, so I decided we needed some winter pictures. So this is over at Plant 1, one of the basins during one of the many freezes our water operators have to deal with. Okay, so let's dive into all the numbers, the revenue. So our revenue overall, we're above what we were halfway through. Okay, let me back up the layout on this. So we have our current year, and I'm comparing it to last year at the end of June, and then I'll compare it to half of the budget. So right now we're ahead of where we were last year, but we're a little behind what the budget was. And so I had a couple points I have highlighted there to just talk about. So Grandview, as you know, we've talked about during budget last year, lost their biggest customer. So in that box over on the left-hand side, you can see they're at about 74% compared to previous year water usage. But we had a 30% rate increase this year. So you're not going to necessarily see it quite as much in the dollars, but they are, the usage just isn't there like it has been. And then the second line under miscellaneous income down there, we are above prior year and budget. We have built into our industrial water system, if customers go over their fixed operating amount, they get charged an exceedance charge. And we've had 4 customers so far this year hit that. And so we have roughly $93,000 in that miscellaneous income due to those exceedance charges. And then down towards the bottom, I just have some historical graphs of usage and sales on both the water and the electric side. Is there any questions on that slide?
I think
Nope.
you're good to keep going.
All right. So now on the expenses, again, you know, I have 3 highlighted lines there I just want to quickly talk about. So the water purification, that's the chemicals that we purchase that goes into to treat our water. As you know, like the industrial water, which is the bulk of that, is not potable water, but we do take out the main dirt out of the river. And that the water purification line usually can sway quite a bit. It has a lot of variance in it, and just a lot of it depends on what the river is. One load of chemicals roughly about $30,000. So if we get one or two extra loads in, that really can swing that. I also talked to Devin, our water supervisor, and at the beginning of the year, they cleaned out the tanks. So they drew the tanks all the way down, cleaned them out, and then ordered extra to refill those tanks. So that is probably part of that overage we have. Hopping down to the general O&M. Excuse me. There's a graph down on the lower left that kind of spells that out a little easier. And this is pretty typical for the half year. We have extraordinary maintenance projects that we have in the budget, but almost all of them are weather dependent. And so we have to wait until the drier part of the year, which ends up being in the second half of the year. So further on, I have a slide kind of detailing out what those are, but that's where the bulk of that variance is. And then the bottom one, the planning and development and grants, that's over on the right-hand side. And these are projects, most of them are not standard operating costs. They're grants, they're things we are doing that we want to keep track of. For instance, the adjudication is kind of out of an ordinary, but we need to do it. So we pulled that out and are keeping track of that. All the ones that are highlighted in blue are grants. All the ones that are white are coming out of our rates. And then the numbers at the bottom don't totally jive to the upper line up above. And the reason is because I included the broadband costs in there. Those are reflected more on the capital side of the balance sheet or the financial statements. So that's what the off is on those totals. Any questions on that side?
I just want to add, we're not going to have any offsetting income for the grants for broadband until we turn in. And I think we're doing quarterly milestones. Is that correct? Yeah. So every 3 months we'll get a reimbursement for the prior quarter's expenditures on these grants. So there'll be income offsetting.
Right. And we have gotten, I believe, 2 checks so far from the county. The county is our first tier that we're hitting for that reimbursement.
Atul, did you have a question?
I did. So I'm looking to see, Annette, if you have any thoughts on the trends around water purification year over year, seasonal trends, and how they might be evolving.
You know, we had one of the big things we had is, if you remember, what was it? A year and a half ago, we had Frazzle, and then we got hit with that earth dam slide back to back. Things like that just throw the turbidity and the dirt in the river for just into chaos and creates lots of chemical usage and lots of coordination and work on our water operators. It just really depends. If you're trying to track or link that to climate change, I mean, you could say because it seems like we're getting heavier rain some days. More storms might pull dirt in off the fields. But it's not, you would have to step back a lot farther than a year-to-year comparison to be able to see something like that.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just always curious about seeing patterns or trends that we can learn from, that's all.
Yeah, I think that the biggest pattern that I've seen on the chemistry is just that the price of the chemicals themselves have gone up so much, it's out of everything else.
Yeah.
It's more than doubled since I've been here.
But we are $1.4 million under budget so far for the year on expenses, correct?
We are, but again, we have quite a bit of extraordinary maintenance, and that's in a further slide. We can see a little bit better on how that's spending out. All right.
Okay.
So we did have a drone fly this year, and so this was one of the cool pictures that came out of that.
The
Um,
Falcon?
We do use drones. They've kind of been a game changer as far as inspecting our electrical lines. And they're a great tool to have, but we occasionally get really cool pictures out of them.
I like that little
Is that-
star post. They all like that?
Chris,
would
do you know
know.
that answer?
No.
I've seen several of them, but I don't know why.
So it just depends on what vendor you're buying your pole from and what year. That's a typical thing they put in there to prevent the pole top from splitting. But not every vendor does it, and not every pole top splits. So it's yeah, that's what they're for.
Just happen to make it really cute.
It's cool looking, yeah.
Just curious, does anybody know what kind of bird that is?
Red tail, I think.
Red tail hawk.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so here's the one. We have the capital on the top, and we have the extraordinary that we were just speaking about towards the bottom. This was laid out a little differently. So we have what we actually have spent January through June, what we're expecting to spend July through December, and then how that's comparing to budget on that. And again, I have my highlighted lines I wanted to touch on. RW28, I just want to make sure we understand RW28 are the projects that we're doing to keep plant one going. It's not, the RW38 is the rebuild of plant one. RW28, as you can see, we under budgeted on this one. So far this year, we've had basin wall, joint repair. We had to replace and enlarge a door. We had to fix some freeze gates. It's just taking some investment to keep that plant going. And so that's where those costs are falling. And they're not necessarily predictable, but we will be upping that budget next year. The second one's RW33, and that one's been on the budget for a while. It's coordination with the customer, and we still do not have an agreement with Petrogas. We're doing some other stuff with Petrogas, but it hasn't been a huge priority, so that is going to be pushed into next year. And then below that, E22, if you've been around or heard, this has been going on since 2019, and it's a substation that our guys have struggled with, and we think we're at the end of it. Right now, we're in some testing, and we're hoping to wrap this up. I know I've said this before, but we're really hoping to wrap this up soon. So the electricians and Kurt and Garrett will probably throw a party when that happens, just to get out from under that. And then down towards the bottom, the extraordinary maintenance, those are the ones that I had talked about that are the big maintenance projects, so we pull them out. And so that top one, the mud basins, typically yearly, we contract this out. And so these are the basins that all the mud settles out of the water. And so we have to wait till they dry out. And even when it's been dry for a long time, excavators still get stuck. We have some really good pictures of that. But with that rain we had, I know it was only, what was it, 2 days worth of rain, but it definitely set us back. And the basins aren't so full that we feel like it is a huge priority. So we're going to be pushing that into next year and just bypass the clean out of the basins this year. So any questions on this one?
And that's an annual thing typically that we do in that?
Yes, typically we clean out the basins and then we just kind of rotate which basins we're focusing on, just depending on which ones needs to be cleaned out.
And you said we're pushing the clean out of those basins back a year. Is that correct?
Correct. It's typically, like you said, it's typically an annual cost, but because of that rain and because we're not in dire need to do any of that this year, we're going to push that out into next year.
And is that those basins, just so I have a little better understanding, do those basins take the mud off before it goes to the plant, or are they kind of effluent from the plant?
Yeah, so the water, this is more of a Kurt thing, but the water flows into the basins, and I don't always get my terms right. The boys are, and then every once in a while they drain those basins and do a wash down. And that wash down then pushes all that stuff out into a settling pond. So it's actually that settling pond that we wait till it dries out, and then we get big excavators and contract it out. And then contractors fill up, sometimes it's lots and lots of dump trucks full of this stuff, and then remove it so that we have more room for the sediment, the more sediment coming down.
Great, thank you. Good explanation.
Sure.
Done.
Yeah, so and again, Kurt and Brian especially are the ones that know this better than anybody, but I think the last time, the last basin we just scraped out, we moved across the whole thing, which is a couple of acres, we moved 7 or 8 feet of depth of this muck. And so it was, gosh, hundreds of dump trucks. And that's why the cost is high. So it's a lot of the trucking. You can't just shovel that stuff back in the river, even that's where it came from. You gotta dispose of it.
I think it was 3,500 yards of material last time around.
A lot. It's a lot of dump trucks. All right, any further questions on this one? All right, so we're basically at the end. If there's any overall questions on how we're doing?
I don't have any questions. I want to thank you again for putting out such a nice presentation, though. You certainly make it easy to follow.
Thank you. Thank you. All right,
So-
well, thank you very much.
My
don't have
question
to-
would be, what is our next, when is our next check-in on the budget?
We have, oh, I don't have my schedule right in front of me. But we have a commission, session. Budget work session, September 10th. And then my first draft is the second meeting in October. So
Okay.
we'll try it on the September 10th, kind of get direction, kind of get any ideas from you guys. So it's more of a brainstorming discussion at that point.
That's right. Thanks for that reminder.
Sure.
Thank you, Annette.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Let's have the general manager's report.
I'm hoping this will be relatively quick. So our next regularly scheduled commission meeting, I'd like to change the format a little bit. And just go ahead and do, a really abbreviated kind of checks and vouchers meeting like we did last summer. And then have a water capital planning workshop as the second half. So this would be we're gonna daylight what we found, talking to our customers and talking to our engineers, and make a recommendation for how we proceed with our water assets for the long term. And then, so the idea is to get you guys, informed, and then get some guidance from you and make sure that's all right. And then what you'll do is you'll see an update of that capital plan each year, and you'll obviously see the next year's worth of it in the budgets. So that's where you'd be asked to actually approve any of the bits and pieces. So with your approval, I'll go ahead and restructure next 2 weeks meeting, and that's what it'll look like. Got head nods.
Yep.
I have a question about, are you suggesting, Chris, that we, just include that as an agenda item on our regular meeting, or like close the regular meeting, then have a special meeting?
Oh, I mean, we can do it either way. What I'm really suggesting is that we just truncate the normal agenda and, take off the telecom, take off the geothermal, take off all of that stuff. And just have essentially the public comment, checks and vouchers. And then we essentially have the water workshop as the only main agenda item, and then commissioner reports and close the meeting. That would be what I would think the agenda would look like.
Okay.
Cool.
I just was
Yeah, last year we just had one brief meeting in August, right? That was just to approve vouchers. So Chris and I discussed that that might be a good time to have this longer conversation instead of having an additional workshop meeting.
Kind of a
Sounds
more
good.
efficient. And then just to let people know, in September, Wapuda is holding their meeting over in the Chelan area. And I don't normally go to those when commissioners go. So I'd like to go to that one particularly. They're going to have a tour of an electrolyzer. And I haven't, since I went through Plug Power back in the 80s in upstate New York, I haven't seen fuel cells and electrolyzers in place. And so this is one where Douglas PUD is actually installing them, and they're going to take people on a tour. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to go to that.
Well, I'm not going, but whether or not other commissioners go, you probably should.
Yeah, I don't think you should not go because commissioner's going. Yeah.
I'm just sensitive to the fact that we're a tiny organization, and if we have a flotilla of people over there, it just costs a lot of money.
Atul and Todd, are you going?
I was gonna defer, and if Atul wants to go in person, then I'm happy to sit back, but if he's going to be busy with other things, then I'm happy to go over there.
Yeah, I would like to go. And actually, but I don't want Chris to discourage Chris at all from going, as well. And frankly, Chris, if you want to carpool, that would be great too. But anyway, yeah, I'd like to go.
Okay. Then I would suggest anybody that wants to go, we got a note late yesterday from Wapuda that they got 5 more rooms and that they had 10 left. So anybody that's going, I would encourage you to make reservations today.
Okay.
I want to talk about that really quick, and I don't want to sideline the conversation, but Anne used to make the reservations for the commission.
Mhm.
Are we doing that? I don't think we had a formal discussion about that. You would like the commissioners to make their own reservations
Yeah,
now, is that correct?
I do recall that we had a discussion about that, but that is the gist of it, that I'd like
Yeah.
everybody to make their own reservations and then just turn in for it on expenses, and we'll take care of it every month.
While we're on the subject, the next week after the Wapuda meeting in Douglas County is the water workshop. So it seems like a reasonable time to discuss who might be going to that one in Spokane.
Actually, John is one of the presenters, and I was planning on going to that one. Just as, where I'm kind of up to here on adjudication, that's going to be a big piece of what the water workshop is about. It's an every other year workshop, if I recall correctly.
I'll just be there on Wednesday. And we have Tuesday afternoon, evening, and then like back up.
Jamie, were you planning on going?
No.
Okay. Atul, were you planning on going to that one?
No. But we
Well-
should, I think, probably cover it in some way or another, the commission, so.
Well, I'd
Remote.
be willing to go over there. I'd like to go over to that one if I'm not going to go over to the Douglas County one.
Okay.
So the water workshop, it's hosted by Wapuda, but there's no actual committee member water work that's done there. It's presentations and kind of a lot of, I forget how many different seminars they've got, about 24 over 3 days. So typically you can send water operators over there and they get continuing education credits. There's all kinds of seminars that are offered. Like I said, it's every other year. It's good meeting, good learning, but we don't need the formal water representation for voting on committees or anything like that. It's just if people want to go and learn. And that one, I would say more is actually probably better because we're largely a water utility and it's kind of all about us.
So do we need a motion to, for per diems or to approve going?
No, you
No,
can
no.
do that during your commissioner
Okay,
report, and we're
okay.
actually a little ways away from that
Sorry.
meeting also, so we might wanna, I may change my mind. My folks are over in that area also, so, yeah, but
Okay.
we can do that.
Gotcha.
That's it for my update. Unless
Okay.
people have questions.
Questions? Nope. Okay, moving on to old business with the broadband updates.
And Andrew's gonna show us something that he's built that can help you see our progress on the Point Roberts project.
Morning, everyone.
Well, can you hear Andrew over there?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
So I just wanted to go through. Let's see here. Just 1 minute. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the broadband project for Point Roberts. And so we have this permit tracker that we put together along with our consultants, Todd Finley and Associates. So you can go through and you can see a visual on the right of a map of all the PSC pull attachments that we will be submitting. There's a few in progress, I believe 14 that's been 15 it's been submitted. I'll try to click on this over here. So these are the ones that have been submitted to date. And the remaining will be completed still in time by the end of this month. If you want to, you can go out to this site. I think we've shown you how to get here from the PUD's main homepage. So this is publicly accessible, so you can go through and you can see here, you know, each permit package that's submitted or the ones that are pending. But just want to give you a quick visual rather than just, you know, making a few comments this morning. So wanted to let you know that we are updating this tracker as promised. And so I'll stop there if there's any questions.
Yeah, and as we transition to construction, you'll see a similar update for customers past, and then ultimately we'll have a tracker showing customers that have actually signed on that we've got online.
Questions for Andrew?
When you say customers, Chris, you mean Would-Be-Tel or you mean actual end users?
Well, we're not a retail outlet,
Right, okay.
so it'll be end users for Would-Be-Tel, but it'll be strands that Would-Be-Tel pays us for.
Okay,
So, and remember, the goal here is to try and get broadband out to as many people as possible in Point Roberts. So part of it'll be, we don't know what our take rate's going to be. And, but that being said, as we get the passes out there, Would-Be-Tel is going to blanket it because they've got an incentive to hook people up. And then if they're not getting super high take rates, Andrew and I are going to go out there door to door with flyers. And I mean, it's small enough that the marketing plan involves shoe leather. And we'll just do that. It'll be kind of fun, actually.
Sounds great at doors.
I was going to say, I'm happy to knock doors with you, Chris.
Okay,
So, yeah.
excellent, excellent.
Right.
May take you up on that, Todd.
I rode in a truck with Andrew for 4th of July, so I think I can
There you
make
go.
it to Point Roberts with you.
Is that it for broadband?
That's it.
Okay.
It's time for broadband.
This is adjudication.
Not much of an adjudication update. We'll have a little brief discussion in executive session. It's in stasis right now just because we're waiting for the August 26th hearing in court. Nothing consequential to filings that have come up. The court has not set up the case management committee, again, which is focused on the rules of procedure for court, not on anything else about that. So the why I have to come back the 25th after adjudication presentation is the hearing is the 26th in the morning, so back that night.
So Atul heard yesterday in a meeting from Robin McPherson that they're not expecting to send notices now probably till next year. And that was news to me, so
It's news to me, and so we'll find out more as we go. I have my regular call with the Limit Councils coming up next week or so, so we'll see what they've heard, and I have a call with Shannon Hinchcliffe from the administrative courts tomorrow.
I would like to couch that a little bit in the following way. What Robin says that currently she expects that the notices will go out in November, but if there's any more delays, that it will push it into next year quite likely because of the holiday interaction.
And
I will
think-
just say, I would not be surprised if there is a delay because Ecology has not disclosed their claim form or forms. And given comments that people have made and what Ecology had issued first and claim form, if there's not substantial revisions, I would not be surprised if some parties file a challenge over the claim.
I got the feeling that ecology was struggling a little bit with timing, uncertainty on and the forms as well. Regarding the forms, there was a comment made about how the challenges to how to please everybody kind of circumstances that ecology is facing. The making it user friendly, and then at the same time complying. And then there's one other thing that, since I was going to bring this up in my commission report, I'll mention it now. There's one other thing that relates to that, and that is a statement that Robin made in which she said that the form itself doesn't establish, and it doesn't change the law. But I just want to make clear that that didn't give me any, as a private well owner, any comfort. Because the execution of the law is the law for all practical purposes, for most people. For most of us, we don't have the option to challenge the execution very cost effectively, which is a formal legal challenge, and the due diligence and the work that one needs to do. So I think for most people, the form is the implementation of the law, and does really matter.
I think that's a fair comment. I think that it's Ecology is in a transition of its typical role from the entity that manages water rights processing and being the decision maker. So in control and they tend to communicate definitive statements. And in that, they are now a party in a litigation, and it would be, I would be remiss if I was in their shoes to say determinatively what an outcome of a court might be in the effect of a form. That is for a court to determine, not Ecology at this stage, because we are in litigation. We are not in an administrative or policy process. And the form, put it in context, the risk that might happen is if you file a form, then you have stated what you think the scope of your claim would be. And you would have to file an amendment if you find evidence, or you think, oh, I misstated my water consumption on an annual basis, and you went to submit evidence that was exceeding what you said in your form. Then someone could argue, no, you're not consistent with your claim that you filed, thus you don't get to pursue what your evidence showed that was in excess of what was on the form. You must file a motion to amend the form and get the court's approval of the amendment to the form. So that is an argument some parties could make. I don't know how a court is going to rule or process that. We don't have rules in effect yet for amending claim forms. So it's premature, I think, for a party in litigation to speculate how a court might rule.
Did the Yakima decision involve private well owners?
I'm certain it must have. So some
Only surface water.
only surface. Yeah, that's right. It's not groundwater wells. Yes.
So
you're correct.
this
Sorry.
is even more complicated than
It's more complicated because of the groundwater and because the number of parties are so far in excess. And
Yeah, John, didn't they have, it's like 300 to 500 litigants in the Yakima case?
Yeah.
It wasn't, it
30,000.
we're
It
at
wasn't
10,000
tens of thousands.
10,000 with 30,000 plus claims. And I'll just commentary. It may or may not be fair or appropriate, but I'll make it anyways. Yeah, just Ecology. The notion of compliance and Ecology's conveying, issues of compliance with the process, the form, are trying to be user friendly. This is a dilemma that they've confronted and had to battle. They have certain rules under the law that the form is required. That's set out in statute. And if they're trying to model or morph that form or what's required to be stated legally to a non-legal phrasing, that sometimes they risk creating issues that it's not adequate and so it's a challenge. So they're trying to morph what is prescribed in statute to be what they call user-friendly, but it doesn't become user-friendly because you can't morph it to every perceived situation. Groundwater withdrawals for stock watering versus groundwater wells for domestic versus groundwater wells for 2 homes, groundwater wells for irrigation, only lawn irrigation, or, you know, the confusion of, well, I'm irrigating a crop out of a groundwater well. Well, that may not be allowed. So what you need, you know, it's just, it's a complex situation under the law, although it's perceived to be straightforward because so many people use the wells, but when you overlay the legal parameters on it, it's more complex, particularly in a litigation context than people can realize. And yes, it makes it difficult for the individual well owners to engage in the complex litigation system with rules that are undefined, but that's what we have.
And John, if I could add one thing, there's another real wild card in our litigation that's different than the Yakima litigation. The rights of the various tribes over in the Yakima Basin were largely decided before the adjudication. And so that, here, that is one of the biggest questions of all, is what is the actual legal rights of the tribe? You know, what's their claim and what's the basis of it? And that is absolutely unknown at this point. And that was not an issue in Yakima that had largely been decided.
Does the PUD though doesn't have any groundwater wells? Ours is just surface water.
No, our Grandview is groundwater.
That's a groundwater. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a claim there. Yeah, it's we're gonna be up to here with it.
Is that only because you're so short, Chris?
That's it. That's it. It comes up to John's shoulders. It's right up to the top of my head.
And just for a timeline, again, that's August 26th.
August 26th.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to geothermal.
The only update on geothermal is that the terms and conditions are being negotiated right now between the NUCSAC and HERO, which is the organization that had the successful proposal for the pre-feasibility study. And Andrew and I met with them, and I think I may have reported out on that last time, but that it was a great meeting. HERO's the right organization. I'm absolutely delighted that they were picked. It's not who I would have recommended. So the panel the NUCSAC put together, which Andrew and I were both on, consisted of a whole bunch of experts from the national labs, UC Berkeley, I don't know where all else, and they tore the thing apart. And I was really, really pleasantly surprised the work they did. We'll just keep you guys updated. Once the award has been made, then the study will start, and then I won't have much to report until the study actually happens. One of the things that the folks in HERO suggested was when we looked at the study areas originally, the nominated lands that we were looking at were the ones that were nominated before, and they were nominated before because of the hydrothermal features that were there. Since we're not necessarily looking for hydrothermal features, HERO suggested we may want to nominate a lot of the other lands that were never nominated and start that whole process. And it's a few $100s to nominate a tract. And, there are several tracts out there, so it's well within my authority. I just want to let you guys know we're probably doing that. And then those need to go through the whole environmental and cultural review before they can be offered up for lease. So nominating a tract today, it may not even be available for auction for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We're just not sure.
So the other tracks that we were looking at though had already gone through environmental review, is that right?
That's correct, and cultural review. Yeah, yeah, and those are, now they're saying if we're fortunate, they'll be out sometime in 2025. After telling us initially, oh yeah, 2 months, not a problem, because it's already been studied.
It's like molasses.
Yeah.
Are any of those tracks closer to transmission lines that would lower the cost?
No.
That's a bummer.
Well, one is, But it would depend because it's a 500 kV line, so you'd have to build a 500 kV substation up there. And that might, yeah, so,
So it might not be as much cost savings.
well, it depends. If you've got a project big enough, if you've got something 500 to 1,000 megawatts or even larger, that would probably make sense. But if you have a 100 megawatt project, no, that wouldn't make sense. And again, we're not sure we have any project.
Right.
That's part of what the pre-feasibility study is to try and help you figure out.
Thank you. Next is the operations report. Welcome back,
Well,
Kurt.
Commissioners, just a couple quick things. You might have noticed there was an excavator in the drive-in this morning. So that was had a mowing blade on it. So we've been mowing around the facility here at Plant 2. And we've also been mowing some of our water line easements and electrical transmission easements with this an annual thing, just to make sure that all of our facilities are clear from large trees and growing and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that we've been working on. The old BP intake, which is next to the Ferndale Main Street Bridge, you might have driven by and seen that that's all been taken down to the concrete. There's fencers out there this week, and they're securing securing the site. So that's going to be all wrapped up this week. And then the last thing is we've got our renewed ecology general water permit for both of our plants. And that's it's on a 5-year cycle. The last one was from 2019 to 2024, and then the next one will go to 2029. And that's basically just it's the general permit. It's just our kind of baseline operating permit through ecology for our water plants. And that's all I have for right now.
Questions? Wow, no questions.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you,
All right.
Kurt.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, I should ask, I'm not there. So how's river levels?
Last time I looked, they were about 1,600 cubic feet a second, so down and dropping. And one of the things that we're looking for is a river level under 1,000 cubic feet a second for some measurements we would like to get. So it's headed in that direction, even though that's not.
We're at about 1,200.
1,200 today. Okay.
Yep. Just checked.
So last year, this time, we were hearing from some well owners and from some small water associations that they had dry wells. But if we had any of that so far this year?
We haven't been approached by that, but the ones that were in trouble last year actually went and dug deeper wells or intertied with Ferndale, and they took care of problems. So I know Dave Olson's normally on. I don't see him today. I can ping him and then get a note out to you guys and let you know, but I have not heard of anything.
Okay, next is commissioner reports. Are you dying to go?
No.
No? Okay, we'll start with you, Atul.
Sure, I can get started. So, I guess I should ask Chris before I get started. What did you decide about giving us an update on the ports activities? Were you going to do that for us in an upcoming meeting?
No, I'm still going to invite Gina and
Okay.
her come in and give us an update on where the ports telecom broadband efforts are.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so I attended a portion of the Energy Northwest meetings. I had trouble connecting actually, so I only attended one of the 2 days for Energy Northwest. Todd, you were there, but the big thing for me was the next step in terms of new nuclear technology exploration, and the board approved a plan for the exploration of the additional facilities, as well as the next steps on the facilities that are in development. So that's all. That's none of that is in any way binding as far as a specific project, but the board is pretty unanimously in support of continuing to explore new nuclear technologies. Todd, did you or maybe in your report, you can add to that if you'd like.
I will.
Okay. Regarding the Public Power Council, I think the main thing to point out here is that there's a lot happening that is not visible in the conversation with BPA. Liz Green in her, not Liz Anderson in her report, WPUDA report as the executive director, specifically pointed out that some concerns from WPUDA members about the degree to which BPA is taking input from PUDs on their decision on markets. And the thing I'd like to highlight is that there is some concern about which market. And I think after numerous conversations with Chris, our GM, I just recognize the fact that we are a small player in that conversation. And in general, we embrace any market adoption, regional market adoption. But of course, I personally, our commission hasn't made any position on this, but I personally favor Markets Plus, the Southwest market, over the California collaboration, because I think we'll be treated more like with more consideration and respect by the Southwest Power Pool. Moving on, there was a special meeting that the city did to go over their plans for their fiber infrastructure. I didn't explicitly ask for commission approval for my per diem, because the notices came late and I was pretty busy with other things. I wasn't sure I'd be able to attend, but I was able to attend that meeting on Monday, July. What was the date of that meeting? It was last week. So that would have
I
been
think it was August 6th.
August 5th, Monday, from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. And I attended via Zoom that meeting. Two things. One is that I feel like there was two aspects to the presentation by the consultant that was hard to present on the city's developing plan. There wasn't actually a plan presented, although it was said the city broadband comprehensive plan. We didn't actually see an actual plan. It was more of a study to support a plan. And the two parts were, first, to talk about the existing fiber infrastructure the city has and how to bring that up to carrier class grade. And carrier class grade is basically a level which the city and typically industry is acceptable for industry for being able to provide retail service to new entrants that are not capped just SCADA or internal operational support. And what came out of that conversation were a few things. That they did a pretty thorough job of identifying what kind of improvements are needed and how those could be staged and implemented. There obviously would be cost associated with those improvements, and that those cost estimates varied, but they were reasonable in the order of several millions of dollars in a few different tranches. And the second part of the presentation, I guess I have one more thing on the first part of the presentation. They repeatedly mentioned how the fiber that was acquired from the PUD that we built as an organization in the early 2000s was in much better shape, and spoke about how the PUD fiber that was installed and constructed was built correctly. So a little bit of a very, very, very delayed positive pat on the back to you, Brian, in that regard. Sometimes it takes 20 years to get some good feedback. So there you go. That was the first part of the presentation. The second part of the presentation was, I believe, a little bit inadequate. I think we as community, during the study while the broadband advisory group was underway, fell short in this department. And I think this consultant also a little bit fell short in this department as well, in terms of assessing the market and ways of serving the market with this upgraded infrastructure. So, okay, there's a plan now for how to upgrade infrastructure and approximately what that will cost. But then why spend that money is the question. How do you match that investment to a value given to the community? And why the second half of the report, which is chapters 1 through 4, and there's chapters 5, 6, and 7. The 5, 6, and 7, why those chapters aren't that useful is because they weren't asking the right questions. And the right questions to ask are, what can you do that adds value to the community adjacent to the existing infrastructure? And that would help navigate the investment too. But they asked more generic questions they went back to the question about citywide fiber, which again, nobody's asking that I know for citywide fiber as a solution for the community, because that would be enormous amounts of overbuild. And then they considered other aspects of expanded service. But again, they weren't kind of trying to match that efficacy. You know, the trick with doing hard things and building public fiber in a served area, which I think we'd all agree the city is served for the most part. To make that work is going to take some real creativity, but also a keen eye on the word efficacy. And efficacy means do it where it will benefit at a finer level of granularity than we're currently looking at. So Lisa Anderson, city council member, Michael Lillquist, and some people in the mayor's staff have asked me to provide some feedback to the report, and that's what I'm going to put some language around and say, well, how can we figure out how to take that infrastructure and actually have it deliver value? Because there's no point in making the investment if it's not going to deliver value. And I'm not against the investment at all. I would very much support it, but the trick is now the details. How do you deliver the value to that region? And there's a few specific things. One thing as a member of the EDI board for the PUD, I became aware of this new development at Old Town. And that's one area where there's real potential efficacy and synergy, because it's new development, it's affordable housing, and you can do so much to reduce the cost of living through telehealth and things like that adjacent by exploiting that infrastructure. So I'm going to try to support further investigation in that area. It's a long-winded summary of what happened there. I would explicitly like to ask the commission for me to include, even though it's after the date, that August 5th meeting in my per diem report that I'll submit this week on the 15th.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I was there in person, but I don't have a problem with you getting a per diem on that.
The other updates, let me just make sure I have everything else. I already talked about Water Resources Advisory Committee. I wanted to ask, we talked about WAPUDA meetings. I wanted to ask a question about the Digital Equity Capacity Grant that has just been highlighted in an email by the broadband office. And Chris, we don't have to talk about that today, but maybe in our next update that I could get some information on that and whether it's something we're interested in.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about that. I reviewed it, Andrew reviewed it. Basically, it's all about service organizations such as libraries and others that would put together training opportunities. So when people come in and they are not computer literate, they would go ahead and get them up to speed on a PC and how to log in and that kind of stuff, and get them to where you can hand someone a PC, but that doesn't mean they're going to be on the internet if they have absolutely no clue how to run the thing. So the grant really is directed at organizations like that and not ours. But yeah, we looked at that, I don't know, a month ago, month and a half ago. And
And I assume so. I just wanted to check, really my question is then, is there anything that they need from us to support them in that regard? If they do, obviously, I'm sure you guys will be more than happy to help. If there's any libraries or people who are uninformed, you feel comfortable with me asking them to contact you guys at staff regarding that, or you think they already have it well underhand?
well, I mean, two things. I think they've got it fairly well under control. And the second thing is Gina has offered to do that coordination on behalf of the broadband steering committee. And she's tightly tied with that group. And I think she's the right person to coordinate.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I had then. Thanks. End of my.
Just for the record, to formalize things, I heard Commissioner Deshmani make a motion to authorize his attendance as a per diem. I heard that seconded by Jamie, and then the vote for informality of a poll was taken so that it would pass unanimous. Just for the minutes in the record, that's what I heard. Effectively, the words being said.
That's
Yeah, and I've made note of that.
Thank you, Tom.
Ian
Thank
goes
you,
through
Sean.
it.
Todd?
Yeah, thank you. So my report, I attended the Energy Northwest Board of Directors meeting over in Tri-Cities on July 24th and 25th. I want to say that I appreciate the PUD allowing me to attend in person and the PUD, the per diem authorization for that. I didn't cost any room or board. So I stayed at a buddy's house over there and I did it on the cheap. So thank you. I arrived in the morning and I got lucky and sat next to a BPA rep. His name was Wayne Todd. So we actually joked about the Todds a little bit. That was fun. I did get a chance to ask him about getting more BPA tier 1 power. And he mentioned that we should be trying to work with Kim Thompson through our upcoming 2028 contract negotiations. And I chatted a little bit with Chris about that. As Atul mentioned, there was significant discussion on new nuclear. I would add it went a little further and they actually approved forming a new LLC, new nuclear LLC, and that is moving forward from Energy Northwest. And there was a lot of discussion about the interactions between an LLC and the existing Energy Northwest and how all of that works to protect each other. And then there was some concerns on employee scalping and moving people over and how that was going to work out, because they mentioned at one point that they were down over 20 employees at Energy Northwest. And part of that was because Pacific Northwest National Labs has hired 2,000 additional people over there. And so there's some robbing Peter to pay Paul of the employees, and that's also impacting the wages that are being paid over there. So they are moving forward with that, and they are using the X Energy design, which is 80 megawatts per pack with about a four pack reactor being the initial. So they're looking at 320 megawatts. And they're going to eventually, hopefully, have about 960 megawatts with the new nuclear over there. I got to learn a little bit about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and their findings regarding different issues that they had. There was a discussion about one of the issues that they had. It was the lowest finding. It was a great experience with my Navy nuclear to kind of learn some of the more civilian, how the civilian stuff interacts. And it did come up a little bit about the first cost estimate. And Chris, when I chatted with him a little bit, he got really wide-eyed. What I wrote in my notes is that they plan the cost estimates coming in at about 720,000 per megawatt, which Chris thought was a little low. But that's what I had in my notes. And I think that we should be, and I mentioned to him, we should be talking with our partners and seeing if they have any interest in the initial uptake of that first 320 megawatts. They did discuss Ruby Flats and that there is still 16 megawatts of unaccounted for. I know that's going slower than we would like, but there is potential for more out of Ruby Flats as well. In addition to our 6 megawatts letter of interest. And it looks like what I wrote down, The cost for that was going to come out to about 2.36 million per megawatt, 300 million for 127 megawatts for that. I did get to learn that Energy Northwest has their own electric vehicle charging program and installation. They do some, they're doing right now kind of a electrification along Highway 20 across the North Cascades there. And they're working with some of the tribes. And so it's interesting that there's some publicly owned EV charging private, and then also it looks like there's going to be some tribally owned. One of the things that came up was a discussion about how there might be delaying of some coal plant closures for up to 2 years to accommodate the new data centers that are coming online. And I noted that because that's kind of an interesting conundrum that we're in, that we have to delay closing, may have to delay closing coal plants to accommodate new data center demand. Found out in Ferry County, they're still electrifying some houses, and the Energy Northwest is working with the utility over there to do that. And I got a great primer on Energy Northwest's budget over there, and sat down with their chief financial officer for a few minutes and asked some questions. And let's see. I really appreciated that we did the roles and responsibilities workshop. And as Atul mentioned, there was a City of Bellingham City Fiber Network Comprehensive Plan presentation by Uptown Services. And I'll just tag team a little bit on that. What I got out of it were there were 3 considerations. Should the city do dark fiber or lit fiber or become an ISP? And the end result coming out of all of that was that they were all too expensive. It seemed similar to our municipalization study. However, I didn't think they went as in depth as they could have on and analyzing what the uptake rate was. They based it on about a 38% uptake rate for that. And I think that there's some opportunities for them to reevaluate that. But, you know, you go into a study only getting the questions to the answers to the questions you asked. And so, and part of it is a learning opportunity because you don't know what you don't know until you start to ask the questions. So I think there's some opportunity for us to learn about that. And as soon as the city puts the PowerPoint presentation online, I'll make sure that we get that sent out I'll get that to Chris. And then yeah, that's about it. I did get some interest in people asking me if I would apply for some jobs at Energy Northwest when I was over there. So with my nuclear background, I told them in November I need a job, so we'll see.
So just the recording and the presentation is now out for the City of Bellingham broadband meeting. It wasn't out when I checked on Friday, but it's out now.
The recording is, and the media is, but the actual PowerPoint. So if you don't want to have to listen to the 3 hours of presentation, I didn't see the PowerPoint presentation online yet.
I'll forward it to Chris.
Okay.
Okay, well, my life hasn't been as exciting as the 2 of you. So I also appreciated the roles and responsibility meeting. I think I learned a lot. I think maybe all of us learned a lot about what our role is and how we communicate with one another. I'm wondering, is there going to be any follow-up from Karina on?
Yeah, there has been. I just haven't forwarded it out to you
Oh,
guys.
okay.
Yeah.
And are we going to continue to have some of these meetings with Karina? I don't know what we've set aside for sort of professional development for commissioners. I can't imagine that this is an inexpensive venture.
Actually, I mean, well, I mean, it's real money, but on the other hand, Karina, in my opinion, very cost effective as a consultant. So
Okay.
that has not been a problem. And she's been really frugal about how she bills and the hours she allocates. So on that side of it, I'm really, really happy. She suggested some additional steps that seem reasonable to me that will probably include a follow-on meeting or two. We're also looking at our strategic planning workshops, which are kind of an extension of the roles and responsibilities, but put into action. So there's a direct tie there. And we're going to be looking at starting those up in September.
And thank you, John, for your help on that. I'll have to watch Moneyball again. So not a lot for me. There's a couple of updates from the governmental affairs from Wakuda. And one of them is interesting. It doesn't really apply to us per se. It's on the credits that people are getting back on their utility bill for energy credits. I don't know, like a lot of PSE customers just seem to be getting these credits. They didn't apply for them, or they just magically appeared on people's statements. But for smaller utilities, that's not the case. I see you laughing.
That's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to apply for them.
Yeah.
Then the utility, fulfills the request.
Right.
So PSE is just pushing them out. Brian's on the phone, Brian Heinrich.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that works, but.
Well, me either. So I just have some of my employees have PSE and they just got
the credits.
Yeah, they just didn't. Yeah.
And maybe for the investor owns, the way that they execute is different. And Brian, excellent. Mike, can we get Brian on as a speaker? Here we go. Okay, Brian, you're still muted. There we are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good morning, Brian Heinrich, Puget Sound Energy. It's a good question. Let me look into it. I want to say that this is in response to the Climate Commitment Act dollars. But let me, if you would allow me, I'd be happy to look into it a little bit more and either come back at a future PUD meeting, or Chris, I can send you a communication, or really whatever the preference of the commissioners.
I mean, if you find something out and you can send it to me, you've probably got a fact sheet or frequently asked questions on this. And
yeah,
like you guys are subject to the UTC, they're going to tell you how to execute. And I know what the PUDs are subject to, which is just directly to the law. And it could be very, very different between our organizations for very good reasons. If you could just let me know, I'll shoot it out to everyone.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
As it relates to PUDs, there's some concern that customers are not aware of the program. I live in Blaine, so we have our own municipal electric. I was sent a text message that this was a thing, and you can apply. There was also an insert, but nobody looks at inserts. It just made me think of how we're going to go forward with adjudication, right? Like nobody really getting that information is difficult.
Well, I talked to a couple of the GMs over in the Tri-Cities area, and they have done a full court press and have very low take rates.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been phone calls, reverse 911 texts, bill stuffers, and the state is basically saying if there's utilities that are far behind, they're going to skim the money off of them and give it to the utilities that are far ahead because they can get the money out.
Right.
It's a really it's a weird problem.
It is a weird problem. And so, Nick Garcia was trying to get people to sort of like get that information out there however they can. I'm not sure if anybody has any ideas, but here in Whatcom County, we have Blaine and we have Sumas that are municipal electric utilities. And I just imagine there's not a very good take rate for either one of those cities.
What'd you think about the text? Did you think it was a phishing kind of thing?
No, because I'm aware of the program, and it directly linked to commerce.
Okay.
So I knew it wasn't a phishing thing. I was surprised I have such a good spam filter on my text messaging that I'm surprised it came through. And I think that sometimes it probably doesn't, but text might be a good mode for getting information out to people. Yeah. The other thing that government affairs is paying close attention to is the election results, the primary election results. And they're going to keep further updating. We still don't have numbers for a lot of things. The last thing is I wanted to circle back to you, John, for our timeline for getting for and against statements for the CCA repeal.
Yes, I'm sorry, I did pull that up. I forgot to get that ready for today.
Okay.
But when, I guess it goes back to when do you want to have this? And then we have to give the notices. So if we're looking at the first or second meeting in October, first meeting in October.
I'm hoping for the first meeting in
We
October.
can
to
meet that.
get a
I'll work
resolution.
with Chris on, but I didn't go back and do that last week.
Okay.
Got to follow it.
Great. And that, I don't have any upcoming meetings that I'm aware of. I may be going to the Spokane meetings, but I'll let you know. So that's it for me.
I'll just take a moment personally here and just add, after about 3 years of pushing the city of Bellingham, apparently last night, the city finally passed my locking mailbox ordinance. And I observed a problem of stolen mail over 3 years ago. And even responded as a city firefighter to stolen mail that had been burned on the side of the road. And I wrote an ordinance and got it to some city legislators, city council members. And it took over 3 years for them to finally get it through. And the reason I guess I bring this up is just to point out that don't give up on trying to make a positive difference. Because I would have thought it'd be pretty easy to get a locking mailbox ordinance done. But it took 3 years, but it finally happened. So a regular person can make a positive difference.
Next, we have public comment again.
I'm sorry. One thing, I went ahead and mailed that broadband document to Chris, so you've got it in your inbox, Chris.
All right, I'll get it out to everyone.
Robin, do you have?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from you. Okay, and it looks like there are no hands online for a public comment. So we are going to adjourn the public meeting and go into executive session for water adjudication and bargaining with Teamsters. It should take about 20
I think
minutes.
that's right. We'll monitor time. Give us a few minutes before we start. Atul, I sent you an invite this morning.
Yes, I saw that.
mid-meeting. So that we'll go over that. So
So why don't we take about 7 minutes and reconvene at 10 to 10, and then that'll be, our initial adjournment will be at 10 after.
And I can get back to the beach.
All right.
we're doing some work on our house. Don't know when to start my house and doing things.
Okay. Oh, boy.
So, I probably be spending most of the depending on weather. I'll try to
It's now 10:36. We are back from the executive session. And no action was taken, meeting adjourned. Somebody give me a gavel.